A man demolishing a village house has been killed by a fallen concrete wall. Cruise tourists enjoy happier return to terminal as service improves. And Camp David summit brings closer ties among the US, Japan and South Korea. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. A 40-year-old man was killed after being crushed by a concrete wall while a house was being demolished in a Yunlong village. He was sent to hospital but later died of his injuries after resuscitation efforts failed. Timothy Lee reports.
The tragedy took place today in Yunlong. Police officers surrounded the area after the accident. Debris, bricks and other miscellaneous items covered the site. Some concrete chunks were covered in blood. The accident occurred at a village house at Tinliu village in Yunlong. The house was in the process of being demolished over the past few days. Most of the house had already been removed, and the site was littered with debris. The accident happened at around 4 p.m. when workers were completing the demolition work. An outer wall of the house suddenly collapsed and injured a 40-year-old male worker. He was unconscious when brought to Pokoi Hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. Edward Lowe, vice president of the Hong Kong General Building Contractors Association, stressed that an architectural drawing should be submitted to the buildings department prior to any deconstruction work. He added that some procedures may have gone wrong that led to the accident. Meanwhile, another case of falling concrete chunks was reported at a Taiwan industrial building. Fire services personnel were deployed to the site, where debris was spread all over the ground. No injuries have been reported. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The city welcomed the cruise ship Spectrum of the Seas again today. Many visitors who came with the same ship 2 weeks ago thought transport from the terminal to the city has improved a lot. That's after the government introduced extra bus routes and incentives for taxis to pick up passengers at the pier. But the government said this level of involvement won't last long.
Making a return visit to Hong Kong, the Spectrum of the Seas, carrying 4,500 tourists, docked at the Kai Tak cruise terminal at around 7 a.m. today. Earlier, the government introduced extra bus routes and shuttle bus services to bring tourists to Tsim Sha Tsui and the Kwun Tong MTR station. Many visitors who got off the same cruise ship 2 weeks ago noted there's a major difference.
When we got off the ship this morning, everything was really well organised and we were in the city within 10 minutes. We went out and had some dim sum. We went to the Hong Kong Museum, did the Hall of Fame along the water.
We went to Victoria Peak and Avenue of Stars. Last time was a huge line. We didn't get anything, but right now, today was amazing. Improve a lot, right?
Yes. Earlier, authorities handed out $50 vouchers for cabs to fill up their gas tanks as an incentive for them to pick up passengers at the terminal. This taxi driver said he came early in the morning after hearing there's around 4,000 people landing. But I don't know how to feel right now. I've been waiting for passengers for an hour. There are too many free shuttle buses, he said. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Yeung was at the cruise terminal this morning to check on the situation. He said passengers' demands are unpredictable. Yeung added the government will no longer intervene with the terminal's transit services as such, and that authorities have asked operators of the cruise terminal to step up communications with bus and taxi companies. Meanwhile, over at the second floor of the terminal, a new bazaar with pop-up stalls was set up. They offer souvenirs, local snacks, as well as artists drawing portraits. But only a few customers were seen strolling along the stalls.
The MTR offered half-price discounts today, which included cross-border train rides between Lo Wu and Lok Ma Chau stations. Some took the opportunity to travel to the mainland. Timothy Lee tells us more.
A tap with the Octopus card or a scan with a QR code, and the MTR will only charge you half the regular price for most train rides. To celebrate its Thank You Day today, the MTR special offer was extended to the light rail, MTR buses, and cross-border trains traveling between Lo Wu and Lok Ma Chau stations. Passengers at Shengshui Station said they made use of the discount to travel to Shenzhen. This woman said she wanted to shop and dine on the mainland. While this man said the discount was of real benefit to residents, allowing them to travel across Hong Kong. He added that more people would have extra time to spend traveling during the weekend. Elderly residents and students could get an additional 50% discount on top of today's special offer. The MTR increased the frequency of rides in several lines, such as the Island and Tuen Ma lines, by an additional 370 rides. The light rail also increased the number of rides of its coupled set light rail vehicles. The fare discount offered by the public transport company was implemented under adjustments made for the service performance rebate arrangement, which gives back $25 million to its passengers. Today marks the fifth special half-price offer by the MTR this year. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A trilateral summit involving the United States, Japan and South Korea concluded at Camp David on Friday, with the three countries vowing to enhance military and economic cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. China criticized the meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, saying the region did not need an exclusive club of countries. Nasvi Karim with more.
It's been described as a Pacific version of NATO, a military alliance between the United States, Japan and South Korea, in which an attack on either one is an attack on all three. A trilateral bond forged at iconic Camp David in Maryland, the site of historic agreements related to World War II and the Middle East. U.S. President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol have been at pains to insist Friday's trilateral summit was not about China. Even so, both China and North Korea were mentioned in a joint statement at the end of the summit, with Biden highlighting Pyongyang's missile launches in his address.
We're doubling down on information sharing, including on the DPRK's missile launches and cyber activities, strengthening our ballistic missile defense cooperation, and critically, we've all committed to swiftly consult with each other in response to threats to any one of our countries from whatever source it occurs.
Adopting so-called Camp David principles, this would involve opening communication hotlines between the three countries. Biden said the alliance would hold multi-domain military exercises every year. The perceived common threats have helped to bring Japan and South Korea together at a time when all three countries are having tense relations with China and North Korea. Japan and South Korea have long been at odds over World War II history and Tokyo's colonial rule over the Korean peninsula from 1910 to 1945. Yoon stressed on the threat posed by North Korea, saying they agreed to improve our joint response capabilities to North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. Kishida was forced to address Japan's controversial plan to release treated radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant, saying the water is safe and the project cannot be delayed. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said Beijing was against attempts to bring bloc confrontation into the Asia-Pacific region and that it would spark vigilance and opposition from countries in the region. Nasvi Karim, TVB News.
China has conducted military exercises near Taiwan, a move widely expected in response to Taiwanese Vice President William Lai's recent visit to the United States. Footage released today by the People's Liberation Army's Eastern Theater Command showed Chinese fighter jets in the air and naval warships participating in the joint combat training exercise. Earlier, China's military said the drills were a serious warning to separatist forces. Taiwan's Defense Ministry said starting this morning, it detected 42 Chinese aircraft and 8 ships involved in drills around the island. The patrols and exercises are meant to sharpen the coordination of military vessels and airplanes and their ability to seize control of air and sea spaces, a spokesperson for the command said. Still ahead on tonight's news. British nurse found guilty of murdering newborn babies. Wildfire continues to threaten parts of Canada. Top photographer shares experience in World Photography Day. Welcome back to TVB News. In the UK, a nurse who took care of newborn infants has been found guilty of murdering 7 babies and trying to kill 6 others. The nurse preyed on anxious parents and the vulnerabilities of sick newborns during a year-long campaign of deception. Meanwhile, the British government has ordered an independent inquiry after the verdict was announced Friday. The government will look at the circumstances surrounding the deaths and incidents and how they were dealt with. Tracy Furness reports.
Oh, Lucy, is it?
Yes.
Hello, my name's Cheshire Police. Look, it's step in 2 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
This was the moment neo-nurse Lucy Letby, aged 33, was arrested for the murder of 7 babies, 5 boys and 2 girls, at the Countess of Chester Hospital in northwest England between 2015 and 2016. Letby deliberately harmed the babies in various ways, including injecting air into their bloodstreams and administering air or milk into the stomachs via nasogastro tubes. She was also accused of poisoning the infants. The youngest was just 1 day old. In handwritten notes found by police at Letby's home, she described herself as a horrible, evil person. She wrote, "I killed them on purpose because I am not good enough to care for them." Following a 10-month trial and 22 days of deliberation, the jury at Manchester Crown Court found Letby guilty of killing the babies, including 2 triplet boys.
Lucy Letby was entrusted to protect some of the most vulnerable babies. Little did those working alongside her know that there was a murderer in their midst. She did her utmost to conceal her crimes by varying the ways in which she repeatedly harmed babies in her care. She sought to deceive her colleagues and pass off the harm she caused as nothing more than a worsening of each baby's existing vulnerability.
A senior doctor at the hospital tried to raise the alarm about Letby, but hospital executives failed to investigate the allegations. In 2015, the hospital saw a significant rise in the number of babies dying from sudden deterioration in their health for no reason. Letby was on duty in all the cases. Letby will be sentenced on Monday. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Parts of Canada continue to be at the mercy of forest fires this weekend. Kelowna in British Columbia is being evacuated as wildfires burn in the hills around the lakeside town. David Garrett reports.
It looks as though the water is on fire. Flames engulf the waterside at Okanagan Lake, a 4-hour drive east of Vancouver. The western province of British Columbia is burning, prompting a state of emergency and a new evacuation order.
We are facing the worst wildfire season in our province's history. This unprecedented situation has come to a head this evening. In just the last 24 hours, the situation has evolved and deteriorated quite rapidly.
Fire engines and hundreds of firefighters rushed to the rescue in Kelowna on the eastern shore of the lake. The fire here is said to have increased by 100 times in 24 hours. Smoke filled the valley surrounding the lake. Helicopters and planes tackled the flames by trying to douse them from the sky.
We needed to treat this fire seriously. All of the predictions we expected came true. The winds that we were forecast arrived, and it proved to be a very challenging day.
Residents are evacuating by road. Thomas has to stay to work for now. He's worried about his health and his dog.
Well, the smoke has been insane. We had, what was it, 196 for PM 2.5, which is hazardous.
A frightening night saw hills surrounding West Kelowna ablaze. Homes were said to be burning in the lakeside community. 2,500 properties are under evacuation order, up from 800 on Thursday. The BC Wildfire Service said the fire grew 6 times larger overnight and stretches for 26 square miles. 19,000 people have left Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, 3/4 by road in cars and buses. Thousands flew out on emergency flights as coordinators battled to keep highways and flight paths clear. The blaze did not move closer to the provincial capital on Friday, but with strong winds and no rain expected over the weekend, the flames could burn through Yellowknife.
The situation in Yellowknife that we're still hoping doesn't become the worst-case scenario.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited an evacuation centre as 2/3 of people in the Northwest Territories could be displaced. There are still more than 1,000 fires burning across Canada. David Garrett, TVB News.
Russia said that its forces had shot down Ukrainian Su-25 fighter jets, while Ukraine said it has struck enemy command positions. Russia's defense ministry said it had repelled a number of Ukrainian offensives while hitting armored vehicles, ammunition depots and counter-battery radar stations. It also said 2 Su-25s and dozens of drones were shot down. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian entrepreneur is hoping to bring modular homes to the rest of Europe after using them to solve housing issues in his war-torn country. Alex Dapura came up with the idea after many of his employees who had fled refused to return because their houses had been destroyed during warfare. It took just a few weeks to make the first house, and now almost 100 are being used across Ukraine. Back locally, after a decade-long battle for preservation, the Chungcheou Cinema project will reveal its first stage progress next Monday. Sakura Ip was at the preview.
The big screen setting in the 10,000 square foot open plaza next to the original Chungcheou Cinema offers a nostalgic experience for the island's local residents, who used to watch movies after dinner there. In the future, independent film screenings and music concerts will take place here under the stars for 300 visitors. If you don't want to be in the audience, how about being on a movie set? This former soy sauce factory has turned into a film studio with 2 familiar scenes taken from local TV and films, a court and ancient Chinese temple.
Hi miss, can I have your phone number please?
No, you may not. Visitors can walk into classic movie scenes wearing costume to experience shooting firsthand. After some quick editing, you can have your masterpiece as one of the best souvenirs of the trip.
The long battle of preserving the original Chungcheou Cinema, one of the only 2 pre-war cinemas left in Hong Kong, started in 2013, 1 year after it was bought for redevelopment into a luxury residential area with the neighbouring land. But instead, they decided to revitalize the Grade 3 historic building into a cultural hub. One of the biggest challenges of the multi-million-dollar project is the archaeological excavation. Eric Chiang, managing director of the company that is revitalizing the old cinema set, the team spent 3 years on the archaeological work unearthing 3,000 antiquities from 5,500 BC, which are now in the hands of the Antiquities and Monuments Office. The team aims to showcase the antiquities in 3D printing replicas to the public. The site provides workshops in promoting Chungcheou culture, such as how to make the island's famous ping-on buns, or the workshops charge a fee. And for the 92-year-old Chungcheou Cinema itself, the revitalization of the building, including repairing the broken roof, will be done and dusted by the 3rd quarter and 4th quarter of 2025. It will become a Chinese restaurant. Sakura Ip, TVB News.
Today is World Photography Day. Jacqueline spoke with an award-winning 26-year-old Hong Kong photographer on how he uses his camera to capture the beauty and soul of the city, one picture at a time.
From the epic urban vistas and vertiginous skyscrapers to the rugged wonders of mountains and sea, capturing this medley of nature and cityscapes of Hong Kong is 26-year-old Kelvin Yun.
After I travel in so many places around the world, I would say Hong Kong is a very special place in my heart.
With these captivating snaps, Kelvin has won multiple international awards over the past years. They include the 2020 International Landscape Photographer of the Year and the Regional Youth Division of National Geographic's International Photo Contest.
As I'm a landscape photographer, I have a lot of chance and time to spend time with the nature, so I can discover a lot of undiscovered place and perspective about Hong Kong and nature. So I would like to use my work to show the beauty of the Hong Kong to more people.
Behind the lens, landscape photography is also a physically demanding endeavor, Kelvin said.
In the wilderness, I don't have any support. I need to bring everything before I go to the shooting spot. Like my last trip, I go to the Tibet, and I need to face a high altitude. I need to spend a few days to adapt the loss of equipment. The weight is about 25 kilograms, and every time after the trip, I have a lot of pain in my body.
His spirit also inspired many fellow photographers.
Who doesn't hesitate to share his experience with me and our friends. Something you cannot face in Hong Kong City, such as a car accident or how to encounter animal attack. And he's always inspired us how to do better in photography.
Calvin also told us most of his works are funded by his own savings. Over the past 10 years, he spent over $1 million in his photography projects both locally and abroad. With that, he hopes the government could offer more support and grants to aspiring photographers like him so they could develop their passion and interest with fewer constraints. Jackie Lin, TVB News. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.